All right, guys. So, as you've seen, I've been putting out a lot of content recently. Most recently, I've been doing a lot with the XFL Showcase. One of my subscribers, Denzel Vance, awesome shout out to him. He asked me to do a top 10 of the USFL and XFL quarterbacks. I finally gotten some time. I finally got some time to breathe with my real job. So, wanted to get right into it. For some of these guys, I did put the postseason stats if they were eligible, because as a whole, collectively, um, I wanted to include what their postseason accolades, like a guy like Luis Perez, who wasn't that good during the regular season, but really turned it on in the postseason. Another big thing as well, including some accolades. I'm not here to debate quality of play. That does obviously have a factor, whether one league has better players, the other league doesn't. Guys, I do not have the mental capacity or time to do that. But let's get into this list. Leave a like, comment, subscribe if you haven't, and let me know where I'm jacked up on. Let me know where I'm good to go on, and probably some decent debate on this. And I'm looking forward to it. So coming in at number 10, I put Quinn Dormandy. He had over 1,500 yards, 10 touchdowns, 5 picks, added 4 on the ground with touchdowns, and had 97 yards on 25 carries. He's my number 10 guy. No one else really stood out to me in these two leagues. That was that next tier of guys, if that makes sense. I felt like both leagues had their mainstay guy, and then the next tier, and then that fourth guy in both leagues was kind of like pick your poison at one point. In my opinion, Perez became that fourth guy because of his postseason accolades and what he did in the postseason. But Dormandy was next. Now, I wouldn't want to put Jalen McClendon there, but I believe he only played 4 games. And while he did pretty well in those 4 games, minus that winning you're in game against the Sea Dragons, and when I say winning you're in, more about the Battlehawks than the Vegas Vipers, of course. But Dormandy to me was the next guy, and obviously he had a really good game where he had the 6 touchdowns, 3 on the ground, through the air. But he was definitely the best passer in Orlando, and that team came to life a little bit once he started taking the helm. Going to our number 9 QB, it's going to be Troy Williams from the Pittsburgh Maulers. Got through for over 1,400 yards, 6 touchdowns, 3 picks. Added another 341 on the ground, 3 touchdowns, offensive player of the year or week 5. Obviously led the Maulers to a championship. Added another 346 on the air, a touchdown, and then 74 rushing yards in the playoffs. Biggest thing about Williams, obviously, it was a culture thing there from last year, from 2022 with the Maulers. They go from 1-9 to finishing 5-7 with the playoffs, included going to the USFL championship. Biggest thing, mobility, mobility, mobility. While he still has to do a lot as a passer, sometimes not really driving his feet or setting his feet when he's throwing the ball. Overall, what we saw from him was just the ability to move those chains, very similar to what we saw from TeAmo, Alex Magoo. Mobile quarterbacks in these alt leagues often do pretty well, especially with subpar offensive line play. So felt like he had to get some love. While he's not the sexiest passer through the air, still did enough, utilized the weapons, got Isaiah Henney involved a lot. And between them, and they kind of had a pseudo three-headed monster with Madre London and Garrett Groshek and him. They were able to do enough. And, his biggest thing, his obvious asset was his legs. And he made that team way more competitive and way more fun to watch. And when, the Maulers are fun to watch, the league overall is a little bit more fun to watch if more teams are competitive. Coming in at number 8, I put Brandon Silvers, 1,500 yards over 1,500 yards through the air, 1,581, 13 touchdowns, 9 picks, -2 rushing yards on 9 rushing attempts, added 22 passing yards in the playoffs with only 6 yards on 1 carry. Silvers only played 8 games, 9 including the playoffs. Biggest thing about him was it didn't look like he was healthy, and I don't think enough people talk about that. We talk about Kirkland dynamic receiving core, but it didn't seem like he was practicing all the time. It also didn't seem like he was completely healthy after I think he got knocked out in week 6. So week 7 when the Battlehawks played them, he wasn't healthy. I love what Silvers was doing when Kirkland was there and everything like that. Guy's a top 5 quarterback in career yards and touchdowns. when talking about these alt leagues. He's played in 4 alt league seasons. He's going in number 5. Give him another season with AJ Smith. Let's see what happens. Unfortunately, because of the injury, which once again, beating a dead horse doesn't get talked about enough, it did seem like we didn't get the best version of Brandon Silvers in the back half of the season. And maybe the play calling got a little bit stale, but AJ Smith's still growing, still a wonder kid. And we'll see if he can adjust on that, especially with a whole offseason to work with. Nothing but love for Brandon. Wish nothing but the best for him. Really looking forward to what he can do in 2024. Pushing on to number 7, I'm bringing up MBT. 2,453 passing yards, 14 touchdowns, 8 picks, 46 yards on the ground. In the playoffs, he put up 273 passing yards, 2 touchdowns, 2 picks, no rushing stats. Biggest thing for MBT, why he falls in my rankings, is I feel like we got a real dynamic splash, but really teetered off at the end of the year. I think him and Wes Hills both had a little bit of fatigue playing in the CFL. Hills, I think, played 8 games. MBT played 20 games over the 20 weeks plus the training camp. Really, I think Mike Mitchell and I talked about it was like 31 starts in 365 games or something like that. No one really comes close to that. It's a pretty amazing thing to see. The only other player I can think that had that much football wear and tear on them, not a quarterback, was Kevontae Turpin, because he played with the Frisco Fighters, ELF team. I think it was Poland, the Panthers, the Warcraft Panthers. Played in the Spring League, played in fan control, then went USFL to the NFL, playing into the playoffs with the Cowboys, and then the playoff game. Ultimately, I know MBT was released. A lot of rumors about him going to the CFL, with everything going on in the CFL. Trevor Harris getting hurt in Saskatchewan. Not really sure what we're going to see from MBT in 2024, as the NFL is his first priority. But regardless, very solid season. Really utilized Sage Surratt, Johnny Dixon, Jonathan Adams. Overall, a great upgrade, in my opinion, for the Breakers would be the best word. Kind of saw some of that last year with Kyle Slother kind of teetering off. But in the end, guy was definitely, a top 3 quarterback in the USFL. Obviously, I give it the Case Cookus, but leadership, the moxie, a lot of these tough runs. But if you've been watching MBT, there's good MBT and there's bad MBT, not much in the middle. We saw a lot more good MBT than we saw bad MBT. Pushing on to number 6, I got to give it to Luis Perez. 1,636 yards, 9 touchdowns, 7 picks, 61 yards on the ground. That playoff run is what puts him above MBT, in my opinion. Guy won the XFL championship with the Renegades, played with the Vipers and the Renegades. 577 passing yards, 6 touchdowns, no picks, 23 yards on the ground on 8 carries. Guy's been through a lot, so many leagues. He'll be going into his 6th alt league season, which is awesome. I'd love to see him hit number 10. Any of these guys hit number 10 since coming out of Texas A&M Commerce in 2018, I believe. Changed the whole mold of Arlington. There's a lot of stuff coming out about what Kyle Slother's opinions about Arlington and the coaching staff there. Perez kind of put that all to the side. Was able to will this team to a championship, especially after the Slother release, Drew Plate getting hurt, and changed kind of the whole culture and the whole moxie and that whole offense, especially in the playoffs. I think he had 335 yards in the championship game. Perez is that crafty veteran, kind of equate him to that Alex Smith type. Can air the ball down, smart, knows what's going on. Awesome guy. Locker room loves him. We saw nothing but good stuff from him. Really impressed with everything he got going on, especially to come from Vegas and kind of just put the team on his back at times. And unexpected championship win for Big Game Bob. Guy sitting at 199. So love to see Perez, see what he's got going on, see him come back. I think it's going to be great for the league as well. Number 5, another XFL guy, Ben Denucci of the Seattle Sea Dragons. Biggest thing with him, turnovers. I counted 18 turnovers between his fumbles and his interceptions. 2,671 passing yards, 20 touchdowns, 13 picks. Added another 305 on the ground, but 3 touchdowns, 295 in the playoffs, 3 touchdowns with 16 yards on the ground. You can't be a top tier quarterback and throw almost 20 interceptions in 11 games, have 20 turnovers in 11 games. The math doesn't add up. A little too cute sometimes. Sometimes he took these unnecessary throws, kind of playing a little bit too much schoolyard football. In the end, it did get them to the playoffs. Put up a decent show, but wasn't enough, obviously. Denucci's on the Broncos there now. I think he sticks. I think he sticks as a QB3. I think Jared Stidham's there. He's got way too much recent experience, but Denucci definitely has solidified himself as an NFL quarterback. He just needs to cut down on the messing around, despite the fact that Coach Sean Payne said he could be working at Walmart if he keeps up some of the plays he's making in practice. Another thing with the Sea Dragons, what do they do in 2024? They have Harrison Frost. They also have Steven Montez. I know they claimed a couple guys, but we'll see what they do once the season starts going. Coming in at number 4, I don't think this guy gets enough credit for what he did this year. It's Case Cookis. 2,295 passing yards, 15 touchdowns, 9 picks, 277 yards on the ground. I think 3 of those weeks he was the team's leading rusher. Obviously, they had issues getting into the end zone, 8 field goals in one game. You factor in as well the running backs were hurt. The offensive line just did not improve until they got Drew Himmelman, and then they signed 2 tackles in Week 10 who got thrown in there. Aaron Cervais had to play some tackle, didn't look good. CJ Perez, a converted tight end from JUCO, was playing center. It just looked like a lot of issues on that offensive line. They picked up Corey Coleman. Everyone knows about that, but they also had Jordan Sewell get hurt, and I believe Chris Rowland got hurt as well. So he's playing with a little bit of a short deck at the receiver position. Battled every day, playing hurt, 10 games, just nonstop. Every week, I feel like I was making a tweet about Cookis looks like he's holding his left side, his right side, his elbow, this, that, losing his wedding ring. The amount of nonsense that this guy went through this year and put as good as a season as he had doesn't get talked about enough. I love what he did. Hopefully he gets an NFL shot. I don't know if he's a QB1, but I definitely could see him making a John Wolford-like NFL career renaissance with a team that needs a quarterback, especially if someone knows the system and he's got like a coach he's played with at one point. Coming in at number 3, Jordan TeAmo. 1,878 yards, 14 touchdowns, 3 picks, an all XFL Offensive Player of the Year, 301 rushing yards, 3 touchdowns on the ground. The playoffs didn't do so well, threw 5 picks in the playoffs. That's why I kind of, debated. I flipped a coin between him and Cookis at that number 3 spot, but gave it to TeAmo because of not only his workload over 3 spring football seasons, but also the fact that he did bring his team to the championship. Talked about it with Troy Williams, the ability to take that 2nd and 17 and turn it into a 2nd and 7. I don't think that gets talked enough when we're talking about quarterbacks. Not so much the evading of the rushers, but giving your team a chance to throw the ball away or get a couple yards. Saw that a lot with TeAmo. We saw it a lot with Cole Kelly. Saw it a lot with another guy we'll talk about, Alex Magoo, and we saw it with Troy Williams. When he got comfortable in Fred Keitz's offense, the team obviously from a passing standpoint got way better. I think I had him down at number 10 at some point for my quarterback rankings, 9 or 10, just because of how bad he played in those first couple of weeks. But once he got comfortable, once he got the system under his wing, sky was the limit. Obviously, this Renegades team, uber prepared for it, made a lot of great plays. It really frustrated TeAmo. And that was a veteran team too, so we can take that into consideration as well. Coming in at number 2, one of my favorite players, A.J. McCarron, 2,150 yards, 24 touchdowns, 6 picks, 100 rushing yards on the ground, and a touchdown, so he accounted for 25 total touchdowns. McCarron's leadership, and he did this in 9 games as well. I think he gets that number 1 spot. He plays game 10 against the Vipers. Probably would have had a pretty good game there. And they changed some things in the Sea Dragons. He's, if he was a little bit more healthy, he was hurt. He wasn't injured, but he wasn't feeling 100% from what it seemed and what I've heard going into that Sea Dragons game. Leadership, the ability to call plays from the line. You just saw so much because they had some communication issues. And when they went to that 4-minute offense, they were unstoppable. Really like what they were doing with AJ. His time frame to decide between XFL and NFL is November, so we'll be keeping an eye on that. As soon as he goes to the NFL, I'm sure we'll be documenting it. But overall, best season as a passer in the XFL or USFL, in my opinion. However, number one, no surprise here, Alex McGough, 3-time Player of the Week for the USFL, won the MVP, second championship. That playoff run was outstanding. It doesn't get much better than that. Talking about what TeAmo did, what Troy Williams did, extending plays, all that goofy stuff. McGough put on masterclass after masterclass after masterclass in the USFL. It almost got too easy watching these Stallions play sometime. Got through 2,105 yards, 20 touchdowns, 5 picks, 403 yards on the ground, 5 touchdowns. In the playoffs, 148 rushing yards, averaging 8.7 yards a clip, 553 passing yards in 2 games, 8 touchdowns, throwing in 9 total touchdowns in 2 games. Doesn't get much better than that. 11 games, this guy had 34 touchdowns. How do you argue with that? How do you decide? You can talk about level of play, you can talk about all that stuff, but in the end, McGough was the best player in the USFL. Love to see if he can do it at the NFL level. Love to see if he'll get an NFL opportunity. I don't see why not, but it wasn't much. That was probably one of the easier decisions to put him at number one in all these lists, and especially he was dominating these number ones time and time again. Guys, I want to thank you for watching this video. Make sure to like, share, and subscribe. Tell me who I missed. Tell me who was too high. Tell me who was too low. Overall, big shout out Denzel Vance suggesting this video. A couple other guys did as well. Really like, what we're doing on this channel. A couple more interviews coming up. But in the end, thank you guys for tuning in. And catch you on the flip side. Later.